Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special event with Erika Alexander, film producer of John Lewis' Good Trouble, and the Riveter COO, Zoë Bassey-Rowell. As co-founder of Color Farm Media and board member of Vote Run Lead, Erika Alexander is on a mission to bring greater equity, inclusion, and diverse representation to both media, technology, and electoral politics. Erika Alexander wears many hats, including actress, trailblazing activist, entrepreneur, creator, producer, and director. She has played numerous beloved and iconic roles such as Maxine from Living Single to Detective LaToya from Get Out, and is currently co-directing a documentary film about reparations. Today we honor her work with this masterpiece. This documentary so powerfully chronicles the legacy of civil rights leader and United States Representative John Lewis. It is a celebration of his courageous life, his dedication to social and political activism, from the civil rights movement of the 1960s all the way through to his efforts to safeguard and preserve Americans' ability to vote in today's political climate. Leading today's conversation is our very own Riveter COO, Zoë Bassey-Rowell. Zoë has had a successful career as an executive and consultant across multiple industries. Prior to joining the Riveter, she was an e-commerce business leader at Amazon and serves as a coach and mentor for young female professionals. Thank you so much, Erika, for being here today. And thank you, Zoë, for holding this conversation. A friendly reminder for the folks who are joining us we want to hear from you. So please utilize the chat box and please put any questions into the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to them at the end. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to you, Zoë, to kick off today's conversation.
Thanks, Madeline. And thank you again, Erika. I am so excited to be talking with you. In my mind, you will always be Maxine Shaw, attorney at law. So there's so much excitement there. But really watching your matriculation as an actress, as a writer, producer, entrepreneur, I am so excited for this conversation. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Zoë. I love to be invited. I am a fan and a friend of the Riveter, and I love Amy and everyone who's invited me. Thank you, Madeline, for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for your time. We appreciate this platform. It's a very important platform to discuss not only John Lewis, but women in business and all these other things that you guys support and make happen. So I appreciate it.
No, thank you. So, thinking about this film, John Lewis, Good Trouble, your first time producing a film along with Color Media, I can't think of a more timely film given everything that's going on. But I know that the work on this started many years ago. And so can you tell me why did you hear the story and say, you know what, this is going to be the first film that I produce?
Well, thank you, Zoë. I wish I had that kind of power to know that. It's really one of these things that happens in filmmaking is that you need a lot of destiny and great fortune. And that's what brought me and the congressman together. I campaigned in Georgia with Congressman Lewis and Stacey Abrams and Ayanna Pressley in 2016. I am Hillary Clinton's most traveled surrogate, and I was doing that work for her second run and campaign for the presidency, as I did in 2007 and 2008. And with them, it was like being with the dream team, Ayanna, Stacey, and I had the privilege to travel around Georgia, learn from John Lewis. I say that it's like being young, gifted, and Black in the South in American politics. And he was wonderful. He was a gentleman. He's old school OG. He opened the doors, he made sure we got up those steps, everything. And in the meantime, he was doing the work that he's always done in the real world. And that type of access led to me making the Congressman's documentary. Rachel O'Neill, who's his constituent services representative, is my friend. And she knew I had started Color Farm Media. That's my production company with my partner, Ben Arnon, and he's a co-founder. And she asked if we would be able to help in a project. We knew that project would need a director. We approached Dawn Porter, who's the director of the film, and her producing partner, Laura Michael Chisholm, about Dawn directing. And she said, don't show me anything. I'm actually doing a project about the congressman. And we right then and there said, hey, maybe this will work if we, partner up. And that's exactly what happened right there. We partnered up, and that was destiny again, to bring us directly to a Black female director who happened to be doing a project that was in development at CNN at the same time. And we decided to work on this film together. And so this is one of the best conversations I could be having, because I'm talking to you at the end of the result. But the beginning, I felt was more like Kismet and the world and the universe putting this team together to tell this story, especially before this time. We didn't know this time was coming. So this is a very unique period that it happened.
Yeah, and look, I think it's amazing that John Lewis is still here with us, and he is able to get his flowers in this moment, right? He's able to see.
So you understand about the flowers, right? Yes. Yes. Black people say that as Black women. We say, give them their flowers now.
Yep.
And that was the first person I ever heard that term, even, I'm sure was Rachel O'Neal. She was responsible for the congressman. She works in that office, and she wanted to get these things done. She said, my boss is getting older. He's still in Congress. I want him to have his flowers now. And she pushed, and this is what happened.
No, I think it's amazing. I've heard you say before that for African Americans to survive, we need not only our stories to be told, but for them to be understood. As people watch this and they hear the story and they hear the life that John Lewis has led, what do you want them to understand? What do you want our people as African Americans to understand? What do you want our allies to understand?
I think they need to understand that this Good Trouble moniker, which is the moniker that he gave himself and that has become synonymous with him, and the icon status that's given to him by his commitment to a life in a fight for civil rights, was he came by it the hard way. I mean, when we talk about justice for all in America, he did that without malice. He did it armed with the courage of his convictions and abiding philosophy of nonviolence, unrelenting peaceful protests, and love for the beloved community. And people need to know that democracy is a moving target, that if you don't nurture it, someone else will, and it will grow in the way they want it to grow. But the great thing about a democracy, or at least the way this is set up, is that the more people that can vote, the more you identify what this country truly is about. If you stifle the vote, you stifle voices, then you're never really representing the country. And it doesn't matter where you go. If you have a monarchy or some sort of single rule, you're stifling also the growth and innovation of your nation. So I think that if they take anything away, they'll see that he put a life's work into a more singular purpose. And here we are still talking about it today. Mm-hmm. So that means it's going to take our life's work. Mm-hmm. And so if we're in a relay race and somebody's passing us the baton, this is our leg, and we need to start to run it, and we need to haul ass.
Yep. I love the way you said that. And I love you're talking about a relay race and it's our turn to run. And you talked about the vote. And I remember in the film, John saying that this is like the single most powerful tool of our democracy is the vote. And, for me, I just became a citizen actually in 2016. So this is my first time voting in an election. And I'm super excited every time we've got midterms. And look, I get excited by it. But you see a generation of people that have somewhat apathy when it comes to voting, and they feel very disenchanted. What can we do to motivate people to go out there and take up that baton?
Well, first, congratulations. I think it's wonderful. We need beautiful young women like you in our nation, and that's what makes us truly great. Can I ask where you were coming from beforehand?
So I was actually born in West Africa, but I grew up in the UK, but I've been in the US since like the early 90s, but as a green card holder. So I just kind of lived my life with a green card and then became a citizen in 2016.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because you can see all these African Americans born here going back to West Africa now to reclaim our birthright. Mm-hmm. And we're having this dialogue between us that I think is very fascinating. We're finding each other again. The diaspora is coming home, and it's very dear to us to be embraced by Africa and touch the ground. So we certainly appreciate that. Well, I think that you talked about that it's that John Lewis talks about the most powerful nonviolent tool for change is the right to vote. Yes, that's true. He worked every day hard to defend it. He was trying to protect that right for everyone. He sees the right to vote as the cornerstone and proof of life for a strong democracy, and he has skin in the game. So he's there talking about it, but he's being shown on the bridge when he's a young man being beaten and his skull bashed in, because even as a young man, he understood that he hated racism. He hated being discriminated against. He thought that it was untenable and it was unfair. And he said, obviously to himself, I don't want to live in a world that this is okay. And I believe that it's our best version of ourselves in a human way is what we will put our lives on the line for. He put his life up, his body up as collateral. And so I think that people who are born into a democracy don't know how it was made. And so if they see something wrong with it, they don't even know how the sausage was made. They get angry and go, oh, our politicians are all dirty. And look at those leaders. And I said, that's actually not true. You turn on the water, somebody voted for that. Somebody picks up the trash, somebody voted for that. If your area is polluted, somebody voted for that, meaning they allowed that pollution to come there. So you should vote for your own best interest and you should participate. And I say that Good Trouble is the act of living an example of courage and faith through right action. He says, if you see something that's wrong or not fair, not just, you got to say something, do something, speak up, get into good trouble, necessary trouble. And I believe that if I were to go into anyone's space and live in it, that means that it becomes all our burden. We have to say, you embrace the world, good and bad. And we embrace each other and we create the beloved community. And so I thank you, Zoe, for taking this on because you're coming along with the country's expectation that your parents put into you. And now we're saying our expectation is that you will have to carry this burden as well. And we're glad for the new recruits.
Hey. You know, I love what you talk about, you know, kind of saying, okay, this is not okay. I need to effectuate a change. When we look out and taking it even further as women, right? As African-American women, you're seeing things, you're seeing people say, you know what, this is not okay. And when John Lewis said to himself, I don't want to live in a world where this happens and therefore I will do X, Y, and Z. You know, what I love about just kind of listening to you through the years, you've always been outspoken. You've always kind of spoken up, said your mind. And here at the River, we talk about amplifying the woman's voice. And that's not always easy. Not everybody knows how to say, okay, something is wrong and I want to do something. Yeah. So how do you know, when you speak to a woman who wants to stand up and say, look, I want to make a change, just don't know how to do it. How would you tell them to be able to like get out there and amplify their voice and pick up the baton and run that race?
Well, the good news is that there is a wonderful blueprint and people left breadcrumbs for us to follow. You're not doing this from, you're doing it from a running start if you look at it. There's people who had a ways to go, but it doesn't mean that it'll be easy, especially for Black women. Black women are the moral majority. I will argue anybody down if they say that. We've always voted for the village. We've always held up more than half the sky. And if we are the most educated, we vote the most. We're the most entrepreneurial, but we have the least amount of help and support, the least amount of funding and all these other things. Then it's hard for them to say, well, I don't feel like there's help. If you're a Black woman, I understand where you're coming from. And white women have the same burden, only different. Their voices are heard more. They're taken more seriously. They are able to cry SOS and people will hear them. Doesn't mean that they're getting tons of funding. I didn't say that. It doesn't mean they're getting, the due, it just means that they're more likely to be heard. So my suggestion is that you have to study history. The thing that Dawn Porter loves to bring up about John Lewis that I think is fascinating, that when they started this, they weren't just out there protesting. They were trained.
Yeah.
They were trained. Reverend Lawson, who was as young as they were, who still does the training here in Los Angeles, James Lawson, trained them in the ways of Gandhi and the philosophical ways of nonviolence, because they needed to understand, as being radicalized by this movement, that they would have to change their way and their expectation in life. They'd have to walk into the belly of the beast, allow them to spit on them, beat on them, and then show up again to give them the opportunity to change. Now, a lot of people say, I couldn't do it. I said, I don't know if I could, but we weren't called to do that. We were called to do what's necessary now. And so my thing is that if you're a woman, no matter what color you are, you're called to do what is necessary now, and to sacrifice is, it, I think, put something on the line for yourself. And if it means less of a promotion or loss of promotion, then so be it, because we need to move forward as a nation. And we need to see ourselves as that's not a loss of a promotion. It's being promoted from a moral center, as opposed to the outward accomplishment that you think you were going for. And that's what needs to happen. And we need to do it together.
Yeah, you know, I love what you talked about, and you highlighted in the film the training, the strategy behind the movement. And I think for me, that was definitely a wow moment. I had several wow moments while, you know, watching this, like, wow, I had no idea there's a lot of training that goes into the nonviolence. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of strength and courage to say, hey, look the person in the eye. It's more powerful if maybe when they're beating you, you look them in the eye. And that strategy, you know, do we have that today? As I look at the movement, I love what I see, people out there and they're marching and they're mobilizing. Do you feel that we have that strategy, we have that discipline to then move into legislating, right? Which is kind of the blueprint that was laid out in this film.
I do think that there are strategists within it. I think they like to make it because of the way that the news is reported, that it seems all this, it just sort of sprouts up and there it is, but it doesn't. Black Lives Matters does have groups in different cities that organize these movements. They do talk, and I had been invited a year and a half ago when I was in a grocery store by a young woman who said, would you come speak to our group for Black Lives Matter? And I said, I would love to. I've met them, Alicia Garza and these people. And although they love to not have a center core the front, they don't want a front man. There is a core, and they are strategic about it. And I want to give those young people their props, because I don't want to make it seem like they're, again, that goes against the intellectual part of what it is to be Black in America. Mm. And a lot of it is through amazing strategists and people who are planning. Inside of any sort of protest, these things can get out of hand, and people who don't have an agenda necessarily are out there, and some of them are angry for a reason. Some of them are just angry for the season. Some of them just want to cause trouble for a day. And that's mixed in, and it gets all lumped into one. But I know one thing, that in order to get at the core of racism, it's about power, and power is about legislation. And if what you do in the streets needs to amplify the stuff that's being legislated inside of the halls of Congress and the judicial core. So those systems that have been placed, whether laws, policies, whatever, financial networks, the visual narratives that control and oppress African Americans, it's a really efficient system, and it prevents us from creating wealth. It prevents us from having health and longevity or prosperity, and we have to destroy it to the core. And I always give this example of the 13th Warrior, where I don't know if anybody's seen that movie, but the window is coming from the outside, and the 13 warriors need to go in and kill the mother of the window, because the window is the core. And if they don't, it'll keep coming at them. And that's why we have this abscess that people going, why haven't we fixed this yet? What's going on? I said, because the core is still there. If there's systemic unequal treatment inside of financial systems, and people can't continue, they can't move forward. Look at Tulsa. They were doing fine and they destroyed that town. Look at Rosewood. They were trying to do something even inside of Jim Crow South, and they destroyed that town. It's not right. They found different ways to create those types of landmines all throughout Black and brown experiences. And we have to go and say, we must legislate them out. We're not waiting for hearts and minds to change. We are going to put the long arm of the law on you, because we're going to set legislation. And if you do not do it, we will come after you and find somebody and put in somebody who will.
Wow, that is really powerful. You know, I think what you were talking about, we cannot wait for hearts and minds to change. We must legislate them out. I think that is the dots, the connecting of the dots to involve young people and people of really any age who are kind of on the sidelines, like there's nothing we can do. let's legislate them out at the local level. Let's get in there at the local level and make that change. And I think sometimes that connection, it seems like, okay, we're going to really focus on this election. We're going to focus on the presidential piece.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get discouraged because, hey, we don't think we can do anything there. But it's really about bringing it back to the grassroots, right? And I think that's what, tying it back to the film, that's really where John started, right? At the grassroots. That's what the film keeps on saying. Hey, vote at every single level, right? Exercise your power at every single level.
Absolutely. Voting is our sword. And if you want to do systemic change in a democracy, you have to vote up and down the ballot, as you say, especially locally, because all politics are local. And I say, if you got a beef, don't look to the White House. Don't look to Yana to fix it. Look in the mirror. You have got to get out there and organize with others, because there's collective power in voting. Reverend Barber likes to talk about something called fusion politics. And fusion politics is where, say, Black women are merging with Latinos and Asians and gay and straight and white women and poor whites and all that. And then suddenly you have a coalition and you are able to defeat this huge voting contingent that continues to overwhelm us. We overwhelm them. And fusion politics comes from the need of, so Martin Luther King talked about economic justice and an economic revolution. That's what we're talking about, that we must have a fusion political agenda so we can bring about an economic revolution. That's what he was doing just before he got killed. He fixed his eye on the money. He said, we are going to now undermine what is totally imbalanced and built into the system. And then he got shot. And it was Coretta King who said she believed that is why they shot him. There was one thing to talk about civil rights. It was another thing to go after the financial system that would be destroyed if we started to tell poor whites that they were voting against their own interest and they should align with us, because in fact, we had the same agenda. They may not agree with us and they didn't even have to like us, but we could all do better if we voted together. And now we are at hand. This is the third Reconstruction. I went to Ghana for Christmas with my mother, took my business partner. We went over there to touch the soil. My mother got there. She cried when she got off the plane. It overwhelmed her. We went down to the dungeons and we walked out the door of no return. And then we turned back around. We had a prayer. We turned back around and we went in new people. We didn't know then that we were walking back into the third Reconstruction and that we would be called upon to bring about the change and the freedom and the purpose of having taken us so far away from our homeland hundreds of years ago. And so I hear it and we are now in it. And so it's a revolution economically.
I love that you say that and you talk about, the power and then also, changing the narrative when it comes to kind of the economics of the situation and what's important to different people. One of the key things, and you've talked about this before, is the importance of representation in helping to foster that narrative. The importance of African-American people being in places of power to be able to change the narrative through media, which is one of the most, influential tools that they've used to create a narrative where we are segregated and we are not all kind of banding together, right? A lot of times our allies don't see their interests in our lives. They don't even see themselves in our lives because of what we see in media. How has that influenced your decision to kind of transition from maybe being like an actress into more of a creator role with writing and producing, so those stories are being told, so we're seeing that sort of representation that changes the narrative?
Sure. Well, I've been in showbiz for over 37 years. I was discovered when I was 14 at in a basement theater in Philadelphia called Freedom Theater. And when I was discovered by this Merchant Ivory film, and I'll always be grateful for it, was a white woman who had started directing and doing independent films. Her name was Connie Kaiserman. And they had a huge call for young Black girls to audition. And when the dust cleared, I was the girl they found. But I remember having survivor's remorse for all the other young women who would not be found from that. And I started to think that as I went through my career, because there were no ingenues at the time, there were no Nia Longs or Jada Pinkett then, there was Cecily Tyson, there was Lorraine Toussaint, there was Gloria Foster. You had to age into the roles that they were writing for Black women at the time. They were all the sort of nurturers or the scolders, that type of stuff, the authority figures. And it would take a long time before I would get there. So I thought, man, if I could just write, I could change things for myself. Then I realized that, I'd have to learn how to write, and that was a different skill set.
Right.
It took a long time for me to figure out that I would have the discipline that came into making myself. So over the years that happened, even if I had that skill set, there were very few people that were funding writers or projects of color. And more and more I saw that in order to sustain a career, that I'd have to be more than an actress. I couldn't just wait for the phone to ring. So that's when Color Farm Media came to play, because I thought, wow, if I could create a world where I could fund the projects, I could make a whole slew of projects from a new portfolio and think globally and all this other stuff. Thank God for Shonda Rhimes really breaking a lot of what was holding us back in terms of how they saw us. Grey's Anatomy was a hit that went across demographics. Mm-hmm. And I had been in the show Living Single, and Yvette Lee Bowser, who's a fantastic writer, showrunner, created our show. But they used to call us a Black show. And I would say, no, we're a show, we have a Black cast. If you look at the Jeffersons or any of those other shows that came before us, they weren't Black shows per se, they were shows with Black casts. Mm-hmm. But there was a switch that happened. Suddenly we were Black shows, and we had to be on Black stations and Black channels and Black blah, blah. And they segregated television after 2000. She broke that streak, and then came Black Panther and Wakanda and all this other stuff, and they couldn't deny. The narrative was it's such a slippery thing. Because people think, oh, they're just stories. I say, no, but the stories that you tell yourself is your dreamscape. It's how you see the world. We see ourselves through story. If you think about who has been instructing us for over thousands of years, it was the storytellers. It starts off with the people who paint pictures and cave walls. Then it goes down to the philosophers who put a philosopher, whether it's Buddha and or Jesus and or Muhammad's words down. Writers did that. And it's instructive, and it's also can be reconstructive. Because we're recreating those stories. And the story that they created was that Black men and Black people were not human. So you could watch that man in Minnesota put his knee on that Black man, knowing he was being filmed, and he was indifferent, because he knew the story in his mind said, I can do this with impunity.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling you that I knew a long time ago that in order for us to write ourselves a new future, and Black people are natural futurists, by the way, we see ourselves in the future because we've had to. And we would have to control the narrative. And now we have new people who are funding these things, who are putting things forward, and new ideas, new worlds all over the world. There's writers from the UK, British, African, all this other stuff. And they are no joke, and they're telling a new story. I promise you within 30, 40 years, you're gonna see the world that they planted, that seed they planted in our minds is growing.
No, I love that. I've always thought that one thing I thought the privilege that I had of not having parents that grew up in the US was that they were not burdened with all the ways that they could not, right? They didn't know all the ways they could not. They just knew, if you do this, you can succeed. Why not you, right? The question that my parents always asked me was, why not you? Why can't you do that? Why? Go and do that. And so that was the mentality that I brought to my life. Why not me? And I think, through these stories, people are saying, why can I not, right? I can be a superhero to the little boys. I can be a doctor. I can be, I can be Olivia Pope. I can be this bad woman that basically ran the government, right? And it got a little interesting towards the end, but these are moments where people just got a little special. A lot of things happen there. But these were moments that people could, people can look at. And I've always looked at your career and the character of Maxine Shaw and said that she was ahead of her time because she was so in control. This was her life. It was going to be what she wanted it to be. And I remember that being a character that I watched and said, okay, yeah, me too. Me too.
That's wonderful. I had to grow into that to see the significance of it. At the time when I was doing it, I was 23 going on 24. I am just a high school graduate to this day. I was playing a lawyer. I was playing my best version of an authority figure with my preacher father background and influences from other places to get on. I went to an all-girls high school, Philadelphia High School for Girls, and you mix that all together along with little Claire Huxtable and also and Whoopi Goldberg, and you get Maxine Shaw. Representation matters.
Yep.
We call that the Maxine Shaw effect. Now, I have been traveling around not only with the Hillary Clinton campaign, but also as myself and doing my own things. And people pulled me aside, judges, lawyers, C-suite people, and say, you have no idea how important that character was. I became a lawyer because of that. I ran for office because of that. I did this and that. So we started to think about this Maxine Shaw effect. They did a study, the Gina Davis Institute, who does gender studies on the X-Files character. And we said, we need to do a study on Maxine Shaw to see how this can only affect, but maybe put through some legislation to give monies into middle school and to people who go into a law career, because they're not getting enough support. And if we're talking about social justice change, we need to make sure that there are enough, there needs to be a lot more lawyers of color to take on these cases. And the Maxine Shaw effect was not there to sort of be an ego trip. It was just realizing that Stacey Abrams, Ayanna Pressley, Marilyn Mosby, Mayor de Blasio, Charlene McCray, all these people kept coming up to me saying, no, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. And I have them saying that to me and saying it on tape and saying, we'll do what we can. And I said, not only does representation matter, it can really change the world. And so when you think about the money that goes into documentary filmmaking, which is very small, especially with subjects of color, because people say, well, why John Lewis, why now? I said, they can't go because they're underfunded. And John Porter, she's awesome as a director, and we've got participant in Magnolia and CNN that funded this doc. We have Katie Barksdale, who was our first funder, a white woman who loved the congressman and wanted to see this happen and funds things of this type all the time. We have people like Level 4, there's Lagra Lane out there. Level 4 is doing amazing work in the independent channels and also changing the whole paradigm of how this goes. But other than that, studios fund what they think will be valuable and successful in the marketplace. So if you look at the channels that feature history and independent projects, a lot of those films, have an obsession with ancient monuments, aliens, sharks, Hitler, all these other things. They're not being funded the same way. And I think that if we don't show these types of people in history, people don't know how they sing. We keep seeing Martin Luther King, but we also keep seeing him being shot. So people go, I don't want to stick my neck out. Those people were shot, but we don't see all the other people that existed, and Ella Baker and Ida B. Wells, and the people that they got their inspiration from. The president of Ghana, who they saw him change it, and then they said, well, let's do that over here. People don't even understand that that's who they got that from. So I just think we need more and more storytelling.
I think something that tying it back down to, bringing it from this, telling the stories and get it on the big screen. I think sometimes people think, okay, if only I can do this, then I can affect a change. And they don't think about what their life means in this moment, right? Like boiling it down just to, seeing me as a COO, a Black woman, so you too can, right? I remember seeing my mentors who said, hey, I purposely want to take a role in a technical company that is non-HR related and ascend to whatever level so that those behind me can see me do that. I know that you're involved in several different boards like Vote, Run, Lead and One Fair Wage. When you talk to just the everyday person about like, hey, reputation is important, how do you kind of motivate and inspire women to say, show, lead by example? This is how you can represent in your area of the world. You don't have to just be a producer. You don't have to just be an actress. You don't have to just be a storyteller. This is how you tell your story in your area of the world.
Well, first of all, I like to try to speak to people where they are. I understand that most people see the best version of what they have coming to the fore. And they also, in a lot of ways, get discouraged because they haven't seen that happen yet. But I try to show them a path to small wins and how they can advance their own personal accomplishment by meeting things that they can control, as opposed to things that are outside of themselves. So the thing is, for one thing, to immediately try to connect them with the community that exists, that they may be disconnected from, or think they're more connected just because they have a social media platform and they're talking to these people. But the collaboration that needs to happen is to find yourself, and usually collaboration with someone else that has the same goals, and then try to piggyback and move forward because there's more power there. That's difficult because you're asking people to hook up with people sometimes they don't know, but it usually is fuel for the journey because they're going to need it. I also try to look and say, listen, you want that to be a certain way, but how can we get that now? Like if you have an idea for a feature and you said, yes, and this feature, and people can't, they ain't ready for this, and we're going to listen to do it. I said, yeah, but could you do that with a photo essay and build on that? Could that be a comic book? A graphic novel, perhaps. Could you play that out in podcast? What would that podcast narrative look like? Could you do a short film? I try to sort of, it's not managing expectations more than saying, what can you do now? That thing can show people what you meant. It also will season you because you want to have a level of sophistication going in. You're competing against the best in the world in a market that they already say is saturated. So how do you push forward? And I said, most of the time, you separate yourself from people by just doing something more than just talking about it or showing somebody an idea that's flat. Make it happen. And so that's what I try to do. I try to immediately try to get them to a place where they have something to show for their efforts. And I also try to point them toward throwing away bad habits. Doing projects and not completing them. I said, please try to complete your projects in whatever form. Because what happens is it drags upon you the sense of yourself as an accomplished person. And it's hard because people say, well, I got this and I got that and I was doing this, I was doing that. But after a while, you feel like you can't accomplish it. And that would discourage you. So I try to speak immediately to a place of how can I get the most productivity with what you have now. You don't have Warner Brothers. You don't have that star. You don't have that money. But what do you have? You got this, and that. And a lot of times they go, oh, I never thought of it like that. Or, okay, you think that's good? I said, hey, Walking Dead started from a graphic novel. This started from this. You have access to artists. Go, and by the way, you should expect to pay people for their services. Not everybody is interested in working on your project for free, and nor they should have to. Did you ever think about how to put those pieces together so then they have equity inside of your project, but maybe not control? You know what I mean? Because that can label down. So that's what I'm talking about, Zoe. I'm talking to them in a way that can get a piece of business done, and then they have something to show for it. And the next time I see them, they probably are so psyched that they got it done that that's given them enough proof of concept to go forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's really powerful. As I know that we are kind of running up against time, but there are a few things that I want to get your thoughts on. One is, this is just, I'm sure, the first of many stories and films that we'll be seeing from Color Farm Media. What are some of the other stories that you want to make sure that you tell in the future? What can we expect to see coming from Erika Alexander?
Oh, woo, everything, girl. I'm gonna do sci-fi, I'm gonna do horror, I do all that. Yeah, that I will do. Listen, we call ourselves the Motown of film, television, and tech. We're building a platform and to talk about how we can tell and build color farmers all over the world. But we're also collaborating with people, with Shauna Mills, who is a fantastic artist. I met her because I did a graphic novel called Concrete Park. Met her at many Comic-Cons. We're collaborating with her to bring Boomtag X, her baby, to the world. We're doing a movie about the Boys Choir of Harlem.
Okay.
Yes, Paula Tammy Garn, some of our producers there. Rachel Goldberg is our director. We are doing amazing, wonderful things. But I think people should go to colorfarmmedia.com and please, sign up so we can have some kind of dialogue with you. And we're also partnering with this amazing project with Google right now. It's over news. It's something called Google Startups Lab. And I think people should apply to this because they're launching a fully remote 8-week boot camp for entrepreneurs who want to start a local news business. You talk about local, that's important. So they're accepting 24 teams for the boot camp, and they're especially prioritizing founders of color and from other communities that have been traditionally overlooked and underrepresented in media. So that goal is to help participants take an idea and develop it into a basic news offering that they can put in front of potential customers and get feedback on. So if you're doubting whether you should apply to this, apply anyway. The thing that we're most interested in is someone who's passionate and driven to serve their community. And the application thing is open now and the deadline is August 17th. So please go to colorfarmmedia.com and click on Google Startups Lab. And we're happy to do things like that because we believe that media and journalism and all those things and stories all go together. And I want to be a river to my people, and my people are creative people. So that's what I want to do more of, things like that.
I love that. Right at the end of the film, and really the through line throughout this film, right, bringing back to John Lewis and Good Trouble, John talked about the fact that they are forces at work that are trying to claw back our democracy. But he kept on saying, I have hope. I have hope. And, I'm curious to know, what is your outlook as you see, do you share in his hope? What are you hopeful for? How do you view our future as a country? Heavy, right?
No, it is heavy. I want to say things have been so life has been so wonderful to me. I have no reason not to be optimistic. And yet, if you're not an artist in this world, if you can't see past your own good fortune and lose faith, I like to think that if there are people out there who see themselves locked within the destiny and within the, if we see each other not outside ourselves, but just as a version of our own self, represented in another color, another package, we'll do a lot better. If we choose to isolate ourselves in silos, we're doomed. And that's what has happened. People say, well, we're being ruled by a minority of people who have great power. I said, but it's only taken a minority to destroy a nation. Mm-hmm. You don't need the majority. You just need the majority to sit down and not do what is they need to do. I know that there are allies that want and have put themselves out there in amazing, glorious ways. Mm. And I believe that that's what's going to make the difference. I believe that when we look at somebody like John Lewis, who was a Black sharecropper in Alabama, and there he was preaching to the chickens, and he was working with Martin Luther King, writing to Martin Luther King at 17, working with Martin Luther King and the Freedom Riders, at 19, speaking at 23 at the March on Washington, and all those things, because he knew that things must change now. And he went on to not only cross that bridge and survive it, but to get a political partner with Lillian, his wife, and his son, John Miles, and earn the respect of his colleagues, who say they call him the conscience of Congress. That if I see his story, then I am very optimistic, because he teaches us that the John Lewis story is about, it's a hero's journey. Mm-hmm. So if he's the personification of good trouble, and the act of living an example of courage and faith through right action is what we need to do, then we'll get there. But I don't want to sit there and say, I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know, I'm not gonna lie what that'll bring, but I do know who I can be today. Mm. So based on that, life is good.
I like that. I like that. Well, I want to thank you. I know that we're going to open up to questions, but I do want to thank you for this film. I want to thank you for honoring Senator Lewis and giving him his flowers and telling the story and centralizing him as the figure that he was in the civil rights movement. I learned a lot by watching this film. I encourage everybody out there, if you haven't already seen it, to go see it. It's on your favorite streaming devices. We have links to it on our site as well too. But I want to thank you for putting that together, for making sure that story got told. And I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, Erika. It's such a pleasure.
It's our pleasure. It's my pleasure. And it's a pleasure to meet you. And congratulations for everything that you do and what you represent, which is powerful. Thank you, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Madeline, we might have some questions from the audience if you kind of want to lead us through that.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. And thank you for the folks who are chiming in with their questions. Our first one is from Davida. She wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for your contributions. Working to dismantle systemic and structural oppression exacerbates racial battle fatigue, especially in your words, how Black women continue to pay the moral toll. How do you feel, how are you able to fill your cup back to combat racial battle fatigue?
Here's what I think. First, you have to acknowledge that it's okay to do that you are right to go out and sit in the sun and listen to the breezes and just let it wash over you. Take your earplugs off and listen and ground yourself, because it's important to shut our ears down. There's a lot of things going on with our devices that can sap and distract us. We need to remind ourselves that we are animals. And you can go back to the land at any point. You don't even have to go outside. You can just ground yourself immediately. I also think that music is a restorative tool. Turn it up and turn it on and dance and laugh. Do whatever it is that you want to do inside of that space. And I have no children, but I do think that even looking at other people's children gives you something to hope for outside yourself. When you're in the voting booth and you can vote for them. You can vote for the children in cages that are on the border and they're wondering who's standing up for them. You can stand up for them. If there are people who don't have voices all throughout the global world, you can say, I'm voting here so I can put in representatives that will look that way and shine a light on that. And I think that's restorative too, to know that these things exist outside of you, and you don't have to carry all the burden. You can say, I did something. And it's hard to feel like it matters, but it does. And also eating a nice little piece of food that you want. I'm not saying, let's be real. Sometimes you go and you say, I'm having a little special treat today and I'm gonna get that cocktail. And I'm not, and enjoy it. Really sit there and taste it. Taste it and say, woo, that was good. So yeah, all that.
Thank you so much. Our next question here is, we live in a time where many CEOs are stepping down due to toxic cultures And when you see situations like Essence executives are stepping down, a Black company with Black leadership, what responsibility do Black leaders have to resist the urge to channel white supremacy? And almost all Black companies should be a safe space for professionals who have been marginalized their whole careers, but many times there is no difference.
So question in that, please? Say that.
Yeah, I guess what kind of advice would you say to make sure that it is creating a safe and empowering culture, especially within the workforce?
For Black professionals?
Yeah.
Okay, so Black people are so used to not saying anything, not being believed, taking it in, or even covering for others, that they need to feel comfortable speaking their truth. And that's a hard thing, because I'm often speaking to Black women in those positions who don't feel supported when they do say their truth, or they feel like the community itself comes against them, our own community, to say, well, how dare you speaking, white folks are listening a certain way, you should have known that was all that. It's a lot. I think that we create a new culture the hard way, that some people will speak up and those people will take a very hard road, and they will take the licking, and then it gets easier for the next person. But we have to be mindful that we have to begin to feel comfortable to speak up. And I tell this quick story of Monique, who literally was talking about paycheck equity. When people didn't like the way she talked about it, they didn't feel like she was doing it, whatever. But I said, I don't care what she or how she said it, she is right. Why did we not stand up for her? Eventually, God bless her, when Viola Davis started talking about the same thing, we thought, oh, that's the correct way you do it. Monique was not supported. As far as I'm concerned, she was Lily Ledbetter. And we didn't, I think, hold it up and look and say, what is she talking about there? And that was unacceptable. We need to support people and also look into what they're talking about and not have any ways to come out of it. And I'll say the same thing about Gayle King. She was doing her job, and the next thing you know, she asked a question and people said, oh, you're being disloyal to your community, called her out her name. This woman who's done everything. You know, you want model minority, model Black woman, you hear me? And in one moment was thrown overboard from people, frankly, who have not done as much as she has consistently in the moral center. I thought it was awful. And so I see how people are frightened, and they're right to be, but we got this is our leg of the race.
And one thing that I think you've done really well, and maybe you can talk about this, Erika, is grace and space, right? And so what I see, the way that you support other people that are coming behind you. I know from the question, the thought of like, hey, we should be more supportive, that sometimes we take on what we've experienced. So it was hard for us, I'm gonna make it hard for you. I went through hazing, I'm gonna haze you. And people come to the company, they're like, I'm working under Black leadership. It should be a nurturing. And I've loved watching you with your female co-stars and other people in the industry, that grace and space that you provide them to be human, and the loving way in which you interact. You know, I mean, I think maybe there's a need for that. Sometimes it's hard because we've gone through it, so we want others to go through it too.
Yeah, that's the thing about abuse, is that that's the virus that moves forward on people and acts even if they're unconscious about it. I went to a convention, and it's full of young Black women, and a young Black woman raises her hand and says, my so-called mentor has been the worst person I ever had. And she was another Black woman. And she said, I admired her, and she came at me every which way but loose. And they said, how many people had that happen to them? And every young Black woman in that room raised their hand, and they started to clap like this. And I said, my God, I didn't realize, and it hurt my heart. Because I think that we don't talk enough about the abuse that we receive inside of this because it's such a small community. They're afraid that any one sort of complaint will follow them everywhere, and they'll be seen as not only disloyal but all sorts of other things, and they they won't be able to get jobs. They'll be, and they're probably right. We need to talk about these things. The reason I wouldn't have known about that is because I don't work in those traditional spaces. So I needed to sort of see that. And the minute I heard that, to me, I saw it as a movie. I saw it as a movie. They talk about the devil wears Prada. Well, the devil also wears Carl Kanai. Okay? The devil also wears, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We need to make that thing. And it's not to tear people down, Black people down or Black women down. It's to show and shine a light and say, this is not acceptable. Just because they have very few places to go doesn't mean you get the right to abuse them. And in fact, we're not going to let you. We're going to hold you accountable. And it will be you that is removed. It will be you that will have to be retrained, because no one should be abused. But maybe there's also forgiveness and love for those people, because as Zoe says, they've had a hard time, and they may be doing something like, I was raised with beatings and all this other stuff. Well, they beat us because that's what, keep in line, don't do anything, I'm saving you. And I'm like, no, we have a lot of trauma that we're working out.
Yeah, I think it starts with the conversation. I think that's so powerful. It starts with knowing and acknowledging it happened, right? And then that gives the space to start the healing.
Please. And also training, trauma and training to say, God, I didn't even know that's how I was operating. I thought I was saving that girl.
Yep.
Don't look at my contacts. Don't speak to anybody until I tell you. Don't be going behind the paranoia of that they could take something away from you. Well, maybe that did happen, and it messed them up in their business. And they said, I can't have you mess my business up. So we got to talk about it.
Yep. I love it.
Thank you both so much. Our last question here is, speaking to music that fills you back up with energy, can you please share, Erika, some of your favorite artists that you've been listening to, enjoying, and dancing to?
Okay, let me pull out the t-shirt. So, what we should do is, because my big thing now is making Spotify playlists, and I'm gonna make one. I'm gonna go and take over Hillary Clinton's, Instagram, y'all. So get ready for that. Come check us out there. But of course, for the day, I'm gonna make an HRC Erika playlist, and I have one for the quarantine. And we'll make it public so people could add, by the way. But Lovely Day by Bill Weathers. When I wake up in the morning, love. You cannot be sad when you hear that. And the sunlight, that. I love all those 70s. Now, y'all don't know nothing about this. You're too young. Living inside myself. I mean, that's Gino Vanelli. I got all sorts of that. What a Fool Believes. Oh, every time homie from the lunatic on the White House, I sing, he came from somewhere back. It makes me think. Yeah. What a fool believes. Okay. No wise man has the power to reason away. If you think that every time you see him, you'll still be happy. So Stevie Wonder is, just put on his songs in the key of life, baby. Put it on, run Stevie on all his albums. Do what you need to do there. You need to dance. You need to go. I love Olivia Newton-John. Have you never been mellow? I love her. So, let me just put it to you like this. I have a very eclectic thing. I'm an R&B girl. I was born in the 70s from Arizona, so I got all those bands coming. I got Dolly Parton. I love her. So Ring My Bell, Anita Ward. So this is all the stuff I listen to, and I just think that people need to also go a little bit out of their comfort zone, and try things on, and see why. So I've been looking at She and all those other people, and I'm happy to share my list with y'all. Plus, I have to show you my shirt.
Yes. Shirt. There we go.
Savage.
The living single. There you go.
Bushy. So those are shirts from Blairism. They're making these shirts, and and I'm really happy for it. And by the way, they made me my own shirt.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So
I love it.
Savage, classy, ratchet, bougie. That's the Blairisms. I put my little shirt on, throw on a playlist. I feel special. Little bling. So yeah, I want to put Barbara Streisand.
Hey.
Tell the Broadway album. They'll be like, what is she, crazy? I said, let me tell you something. I got everybody on here.
Oh my God. People are wanting this playlist, Erika. We need a
You're
get
going
this
to get it.
playlist.
You're gonna get Tank of the Bangers. Look at Tank of the Bangers. Go look at their tiny desk when they won the NPR. That's my girl, Tank Terriana. We'll be working with her, creating a series with her. So all that. It's going to be great.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
amazing.
let's make a Riveter playlist and keep
Yes,
We have to
please.
do that. I love it. You speak the language on a couple of things. And I haven't met anybody that spoke country. Everybody looks at me when I say I like some country, but I love me some country. So we might be there. We might be there. Love me some country.
You too. Because you know why, Zoe? They're telling stories.
Right. That's what I love. I love the drama in country is amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You know what? We've been disabused of country, but again, the banjo and all that is an African instrument.
Okay.
Yeah. So you love country. It comes by you naturally because that is an instrument, and even the country sort of storytelling thing comes by the African American that were brought here.
Well, my dad played the guitar, so I love all the chords and I love good harmony, harmonized guitar. I love all that.
Fabulous. It's fabulous. So see, there you go. We broke the mold.
I love it. We're gonna do it. Riveter playlist.
Yeah. Now, make sure you text me so I can put a couple in, and if every person does a couple, we're gonna have a hell of a playlist.
This would be amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I'm ready for the Riveter playlist. Let me know.
Amazing. Oh, I will. I'm gonna follow up with you on this. But thank you so much, the both of you, Zoe, Erika. This has been so incredible. Thank you for taking the time to being here with us today. And for everyone who's joining, if you have not yet, please go on the Riveter's website and you can watch the movie there. 100% of our proceeds from the Riveter go to Fair Fight. So please check us out. Go watch the film. Do it. It's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Erika, for all that you do. And what you
Thank
continue
you.
to do.
Thank you so much.
Maxine Shaw, attorney at law.
Yes.
Hey.
Oh, I love that girl, but she's better stop signing my checks. That's all I know. Thank you, y'all. Thanks for the
Take
invitation.
care.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.